He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, folks, first of all, welcome. It's Monday. I'm in New York. I'm in New York because I'm going to be going on the Hannity TV show at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you'll be there. We're also going to be taping an hour show for Friday with an audience to further discuss my book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. And then tomorrow, 4 p.m., Cavuto, our buddy Neil Cavuto. Now, I read this story before I came in here. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, a Republican, signed into law one of the nation's most wide-ranging voter ID laws. The move is likely to touch off a major court battle over voting rights, and the Justice Department is weighing a challenge to the new law, which is the first to pass since the Supreme Court struck down part of the Voting Rights Act. The measure requires voters, look how hideous this is. The measure requires voters to present government-issued photo ID at the polls. Let's stop right there. Why does the government issue photo IDs? It's not the private sector issuing. It's not the Klan issuing. It's not. The government is issuing voter ID so the government can know who you are. Now, why does the government want to know who you are? Because they want to know who they're giving driver's licenses to. If a police officer stops you, they want to know who you are. They want to know if you have insurance. They want to know your age if you want to buy booze. And I can go on and on. There wouldn't be government-issued photo IDs, but for the government. So my question is the government, are all state governments racist? Because they're requiring you to have a photo ID. That is a photo with your pigmentation on it. I mean, this is so asinine what the left is up to in this administration here. You know what it is? Let's just be honest. They want to defend fraud. They want to defend fraud. You can't get on an airplane without a government-issued ID. You can't buy booze without a government-issued ID. You can't lease an apartment without government-issued ID. You can't do damn near anything without government-issued ID. Except vote. Anyone can vote. Photo ID at the polls. Have you ever tried to check into a hotel without a government ID? Have you ever tried to rent a car without a government ID? Don't we hold voting like at the top? Haven't we fought, a civil rights movement for people to have the right to vote? Why is it ipso facto discriminatory against minorities for people to show an ID? If you have a specific case in which a state or town or county or somebody is discriminating against you because of your race, you can bring a federal lawsuit under the Voting Rights Act still today, and a state lawsuit under the Voting Rights Act, under state voting rights acts still today. But voter integrity is something the Democrat Party rejects. Because they want multiple voting. Because they want dead people voting. Who uses it? The big cities use it, among others. When LBJ was running for president, or first for the Senate, it was rural areas that were using it. So this isn't some civil rights issue. This is to promote fraud. Now, you need a photo ID at the polls and shortens the early voting period from 17 to 10 days. That's great. Some states are making it 60, 70, 80 days. I mean, how the hell do you even know who the candidate is if it's a new candidate if you're voting that early? It will also end pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-old voters who will be 18 on Election Day and eliminate same-day voter registration. Excellent. Perfect. Because North Carolina is trying to control voter fraud. And North Carolina isn't a big red state. It's a marginal red, marginal blue state, sort of a purplish state. It's the color of that thing that was on Gorbachev's head. I can't really remember what it is. You know, the Florida thing. Democrats and minority groups have been fighting against the changes, arguing they represent an effort to suppress the minority vote and the youth vote. Why does showing a voter ID, by the way, minorities, feel free to call. Young people, feel free to call. Why does a voter ID suppress you? And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, then the TSA is the most racist organization on the face of the earth. Every single person has to show them a voter ID, including minorities. How can that be? Let's see here. The Democrats point out that there's little documented evidence of voter fraud. And I want you to think about that a second. I address this in my book, by the way. The last chapter, where I propose an amendment. Hell, I should have brought this out earlier, but I didn't. There's little evidence of voter fraud. Well, why is there little evidence of voter fraud? Does anybody know? Do you know back there? I'm looking through the glass. I'm here in New York. I'm not in the bunker. I'm in an aquarium. I'll tell you why there's very little evidence of it. There's a judge in one of the voting rights cases, a circuit court judge, he's quite famous actually, named Richard Posner. And here's what he said. And this, believe it or not, is in the Liberty Amendments book, the last chapter. He said, and he's a judge on the Seventh Circuit, in a 2008 decision he wrote, "We're dealing with the form of voting fraud in which a person shows up at the polls claiming to be someone else, someone who has left the district or died too recently to have been removed from the list of registered voters, or someone who has not voted yet on Election Day. Without requiring a photo ID, excuse me, there's little, if any, chance of preventing this kind of fraud because busy poll workers are unlikely to scrutinize signatures carefully and argue with people who've been denying having forged someone else's signature." And he said, this is a judge, "The absence of prosecutions is explained by the endemic under-enforcement of minor criminal laws, minor as they appear in the public and prosecutor's eyes, and by the extreme difficulty of apprehending a voter impersonator. He enters the polling place, gives a name that's not his own, votes, and leaves. If later it's discovered the name he gave is that of a dead person, no one at the polling place will remember the face of the person who gave the name. And if someone did remember it, what would he do with the information? How would he track him down? He has a false address." Judge Posner concluded, "One response to voting fraud, which has a parallel to littering, another crime where perpetrators are almost impossible to catch, would be to impose a very severe criminal penalty for voting fraud. Another, however, is to take preventive action by requiring a photo ID." And yet the Democrats, they simply reject this. A photo ID. And this just tells you how fraudulent their entire voting operation is, quite frankly. Republicans say the efforts are necessary to combat such fraud and that shortening the window for early voting will save the state money. They also note that while the North Carolina law makes changes to how the state conducts its election, most of its major proposals, specifically voter ID and ending same-day registration, bring it in line with many other states. More than 3/5 of states currently have some kind of voter ID law. The Justice Department will bring a lawsuit. They will claim it's something, akin to the poll tax and the literacy test. Do you know what a poll tax and a literacy test are? A literacy test is a requirement that somebody show that they're literate in English before they can vote. Is that what's going on here? You can be the dumbest human being on the face of the earth. If you're a citizen, you get to vote. And typically you'll vote Democrat. Now, what about the poll tax? Do you have to pay a tax to vote? No. So what does this have to do with a poll tax or literacy test? Just show them your voter ID. I can't afford one. Of course you can. But if you can't, the state will give you one free. Well, I can't get off my ass and get to the place to get it. Well, they'll mail it to you. Well, I don't have a mailbox. Well, then don't vote. You shouldn't vote. You're too stupid to vote. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
By the way, I do address this, as I said, in the Liberty Amendments, and what I propose as an example. Section 1, citizens in every state, territory, and the District of Columbia shall produce valid photographic identification documents demonstrating evidence of their citizenship issued by the state government for the state in which the voter resides as a requirement for registering to vote and voting in any primary or general election for president, vice president, and members of Congress. Well, Mark, what about the states? This is an amendment to the federal Constitution requiring this process for federal elections. The states will do as the states wish for the states. Provision shall be made for the state legislatures to provide such citizen-designated photographic identification documents at no cost to individuals unable to afford fees associated with acquiring such documents. In other words, I'll play the game, even though that's BS, even though private groups could even raise the money. Fine, here's your free voter ID. Early voting in any general election for president, vice president, and members of Congress shall not be held more than 30 calendar days prior to the national day of election, except for active duty military personnel, for whom early voting shall not commence more than 45 calendar days prior to the national day of election. And there's more, because there's some states that are running wild and are encouraging fraud. And I feel that, at least for the election of federal officials, that needs to be addressed once and for all. But before I go on, there's a very important election in New Jersey tomorrow. The whole nation should really pay attention to this, but particularly you folks in New Jersey, conservatives, constitutionalists, Tea Party, and so forth. Steve Lonegan, a friend of mine, LoneganForSenate.com, is running in the Republican primary. How are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, let me first say I endorse you in the Republican primary for the Senate. I know the election is tomorrow. We have 2 or 3 minutes, Steve, so let everybody know what you're thinking.
On October 16th, which is a Wednesday, October, and only 9 weeks from tomorrow, the United States is going to watch New Jersey cast a referendum vote on the Obama agenda and the all-out assault on our constitutional rights and our Bill of Rights that is taking place in this country right now, Mark. This is the only U.S. Senate race in the nation between now and 2014. We have an opportunity to set the tone for the Republican takeover of the U.S. Senate next year. But more important than that, this is going to be a debate over the future of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Whoever the Democrats nominate tomorrow, whether it's Cory Booker, Frank Pallone, Rush Holt, or Sheila Oliver, they're all nothing but rubber stamps for the Obama agenda. And we're watching our Constitution being dismantled in front of our very eyes, our Bill of Rights being challenged every step of the way. This is going to be an all-out battle over the future of the Constitution, and it's only appropriate that this battle take place in the state of New Jersey, the crossroads of the American Revolution. So you're going to see in New Jersey, Mark, in 9 weeks, over the next 9 weeks, the clearest line in the sand election between a conservative and a far-left liberal this country has seen in a very, very long time. So I'm urging the whole country to tune in. I need your help. I need your support. Well, if we win, and we will win on October 16th, this is going to set Obama back on his heels, could put a real roadblock in advancement of his agenda and reestablish the value of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights.
And I want people in New Jersey and the rest of the country to know Steve Lonegan isn't a flash in the pan. He's not a fly-by-night. He's been a fighting constitutional conservative from day one, a successful businessman, a successful mayor. And if he's the Republican nominee, you're absolutely right, Steve Lonegan. You will make it quite clear that you stand for liberty, you stand for private property rights, you stand for the Constitution, and your opponent stands for the opposite.
And, Mark, I have never seen the word liberty come up as much as it has in the last several weeks in my primary and in our polling. People are talking about liberty, and you're very much responsible for that, liberty and tyranny and the liberty amendments and bringing this to the forefront. But our liberty is definitely at stake. This administration has a view of bigger government, more intrusive government, violation of our rights, and whoever the Democrats nominate are only going to join the Obama team in an attack on those liberties. This is a critical race for the country and can reinvigorate the conservative movement on a scale we haven't seen in 3 decades.
I've got 1 minute left. This Obamacare, which is an attack on senior citizens and an attack on young people and drains money out of Medicare and all the rest, what is your position on that?
I want it to be repealed in its entirety. I will not vote for any continuing resolutions that fund any portion of Obamacare. This thing has to be dismantled before it's too late. We're seeing its impacts already. We saw how the president had to stall the employer mandate because of the race in New Jersey, because it would have been a hot issue in the New Jersey race. So they're doing everything they can to preserve the seat held by Frank Lautenberg. Mark, I will be the first Republican elected in New Jersey in 42 years. That's a powerful message for the country.
All right, Steve Lonergan. If people want to know more, it's LonerganForSenate.com. But more importantly, if you're in New Jersey, is it an open primary or a closed primary?
No, it's a closed primary. I have a nominal opponent. I anticipate a pretty strong win. I'll never say anything bad about a fellow Republican, especially in a primary.
Well, you're better than I.
Well, we'll all be together. We will all be together when this is over.
All right, my friend. Give peace a chance. Steve Lonergan, he's the real deal. Republicans in New Jersey, you're going to have to turn out, and a low voter turnout, it could be a problem. He'd be a great nominee to really, set the agenda for conservatives and delineate what it means to be a conservative versus the liberal who's likely to be Cory Booker. Good luck to him. We wish him all the best. And this issue about liberty should be the issue of every election, including in New Jersey. And, Lonergan's a nice guy. He said, he likes all Republicans. It's nicer than I am because there's a lot of Republicans I absolutely detest. In fact, the list is so long I can't even read them all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be right back.
Americans meet to defend liberty and defeat tyranny. Call the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
Before I forget, don't you forget, 9 p.m. Eastern, Hannity TV Fox. You won't want to miss it. And by the way, we're also taping a 1-hour audience special on the Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, that will air on Friday. But I think you'll enjoy it. I believe I'm the first 2 segments on the Hannity program. Now, back to this voting thing, because this is so simple, and it shows you what's so wrong. Suddenly, it's a civil right to commit fraud. I mean, look at it logically. Sandy, Portland, Oregon, the great XM satellite. Go.
Thank you, Mark, for all you do. It's a privilege to be on your show.
Thank you.
We have a Secretary of State here in our great republic where... Our Secretary of State was part of the SOS project with George Soros, and she was.
What's the SOS project?
It is a project that George Soros undertook to take over all the Secretaries of State, and it's been fairly successful. We have one here in Oregon.
Well, that's how Franken became senator in Minnesota.
Right. Well, she was quoted in a recent hearing in our legislature as stating that registration is a barrier to voting, and has tried to get through automatic voter registration.
Yes, it is. And citizenship's a barrier to voting and, all kinds of barriers to voting out there.
Well, we don't have any ID requirements other than checking a box that you're a citizen for any of our local or state elections here either.
That is such a crime. That is just so unbelievable.
It is, and we're trying to change the argument here in Oregon. We're not saying we're against voter fraud, because like you said earlier, there's no fraud if they don't prosecute it. What we're trying to do is hold our elected officials accountable for...
Well, let me say there is fraud if they don't prosecute it. There's just no guilty parties that are found.
Right.
But go ahead.
They can say, well, you can't prove it. You can't prove it. Well, maybe we can't, but we can say we are for election integrity, and we're trying to change the argument and hold our elected officials accountable. Saying,
well, here's the thing. I can prove voter fraud more easily than they can prove global warming.
That's definitely for sure.
Look, your problem is at the state, in the big offices in your state, it's all one-party rule. Portland controls the whole damn state. I'm sorry, I'm just telling the truth. And it's a huge problem. It's like in Maryland, basically Baltimore County, a couple other counties control the whole state, and are destroying it.
They are, but we're working on holding the politicians accountable so they can't commit the fraud.
Now, how do you hold them accountable?
Well, in the case of legislation, we got the automatic voter registration where you're automatically registered to vote and have to opt out. We got that stopped with, quote, bipartisan support, because we let them know that if they voted against it, they were voting against election integrity, and that they were voting to open up the rolls to people who were unqualified. And it did work. We only needed one vote, and we got it. We got just the one, but it did work, because they don't want to be shown up in the paper as being against fair elections.
Maybe not in Oregon, but a lot of the rest of the country, they could care less. They just wrap it up in civil rights lingo, and there you go. Listen, Sandy, thank you for your hard work and your call. I appreciate it. Quickly, Tony, New Jersey, the great WABC. Go.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Mark. I was so thrilled to be talking to you.
Thank you.
I don't know. Did you hear about CVS? They're requiring ID so that you can buy nail polish remover?
I did. And you know what, Tony? This is a great idea. Why don't we require nail polish sales to occur on Election Day at precincts? That way you have to show your voter ID.
That's great. That's great. But really, I don't know. If there's an age requirement, they're treating it as a controlled substance. So usually when these things happen, it becomes law throughout the land, which means, well, we won't be able to remove our nail polish, or we won't be able to wear. Well,
you know the old saying, as New Jersey goes, so goes the nation.
Exactly. So how old do I have to be to wear nail polish and remove it?
That's a very good question. Thank you for your call, my friend. Yes, I know the country's going to hell, but we're going to fight back. We can't stop politicians from being stupid, but we can stop this concentration of power among stupid politicians. That way we diversify power among stupid politicians so they can do less damage to us. That's what the framers had in mind. And I just want you to know why I undertook this project, the Liberty Amendments Restoring the American Republic. And as I've mentioned before, I undertook this project not because I believe the Constitution, as originally structured, is outdated and outmoded, thereby requiring modernization through amendments, but because of the opposite. What we hear about every day, what we discuss every day, the necessity and urgency of restoring constitutional republicanism and preserving the civil society from growing authoritarianism. This isn't doomsaying or fear-mongering, but an acknowledgement of fact. You see it, you read it, you live it. The statists have been successful in their century-long march to disfigure and mangle the constitutional order. To say otherwise is to ignore their campaign and aims. And they state openly what they're up to. Their philosophers, their experts, and their academics do, as, of course, their politicians and their followers do. And their handiwork is everywhere to be seen. This consolidated, centralized government with a ubiquitous network of laws and rules actively suppressing individual initiative, self-interest, and success, and always in your name. Nearly all will be emasculated by it, including the inattentive, ambivalent, and disbelieving. Social engineering and central planning are imposed without end, since these governing masterminds, drunk with their own conceit and pomposity, have wild imaginations and infinite ideas for reshaping society and molding man's nature in search of the ever-elusive utopian paradise. And their clumsy experiments and infantile pursuits like Obamacare and 1,000 other regulations are not measured against any rational standard. their piousness and sanctimony are justification enough. That's the beginning of the book, just to lay the case down. Now, I know there's going to be skeptics. There's going to be a lot of people who question this, a lot of people who attack it. Great. I have turned to the Constitution of the United States to try and address what's happening to this society. What do they turn to? What do the critics turn to? What? Just elect Jeb Bush or Chris Christie? Just accept Obamacare? Don't fight defunding? I say we're going at this the wrong way. Yes, fight at the national level. Yes, rally. Yes, do all those things. But how about we take that part of the Constitution that was written for us in these circumstances and at least start to discuss it, to spread the word, to think about it, and better yet, to act on it? Or in 50 years or less, America won't be here, the America you love. Oh, there'll be an America, just not our America. All right, folks, I'm taking a break. I'll see you in a moment.
Mark Levin.
Welcome back, my friends. Stamps.com. Pretend you have a wad of cash in your hand. Now imagine throwing it in the trash can. That's exactly what you're doing if you're leasing one of those expensive postage meters for your small business. Between the long-term commitments, maintenance, and reset fees, and expensive ink, it's nuts. I know a better way. Use Stamps.com. With Stamps.com, you get all the benefits of a postage meter and more at a fraction of the cost. Just use your own computer and printer to get official U.S. postage for any envelope, any package, any class of mail going anywhere. Plus, no more time-consuming trips to the post office. Everything you would do at the post office, you can do right from your desk with Stamps.com. And whether you have a postage meter or not, Stamps.com is for you. I know. I have it. I've been using it for years. Right now, use my name, Mark, for this special offer. A no-risk trial plus a $110 bonus offer, and that includes a digital scale and up to $55 free postage. But don't wait. Go to Stamps.com. Before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the home page and type in Mark. That's Stamps.com. Enter Mark. Reminder, this weekend, like a few days from now, this weekend, Saturday, August 17th, book review on Long Island. I hope to see thousands and thousands of you. I want to meet each one of you, sign your books. I don't do a lot of book signings, but book review historically is where I launch the book. The next day, August 18th, Sunday, bookends, Ridgewood, New Jersey. I would like to meet thousands of you, one at a time, and say hello. It'll be great. Patriots all getting together. You'll make some lifelong friends as you wait in line. And it's just a lot of fun. It's an event. And after that weekend, next weekend, I only have 2 left. So you can see I'm only doing 4. So book review on Long Island, bookends in New Jersey. I hope to see you all. It's just a few days away. By the way, they have great little restaurants in those towns. There's a lot to do, a lot of fun. Make it a day. Now, let me get back to this. I have no doubt, as I write in the Liberty Amendments, that in a twist of logic, the state convention process of which we've talked and the Liberty Amendments, which I suggest, will be assaulted by the governing masterminds and their disciples as an extreme departure from the status quo and therefore heretical, as they resist ferociously all efforts to diminish their power and position. Now, paradoxically, it is they who distort the Constitution's text and trespass its purpose by actively pursuing its nullification and abandonment. And history demonstrates that republics collapse when demagogues present themselves as their guardians to entice you, the people, and cloak their true intentions. I have no illusions about the state's capacity to induce confusion and spread disinformation in defense of their own ambition and aggrandizement. And let me make that clear. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Wresting power from the ruling elite. And the closer the approach to constitutional restoration, should that day arrive, a torrent of fuming and malevolent rage will predictably let loose, alleging perfidy by we the people. It's also an obtuse and defeatist notion of moderation that accepts the disposition of inevitable societal self-destruction without recourse. Recourse to an available constitution provides a constitutional escape. Its irrationality is self-evident. We do not have to accept this. Reacquainting ourselves with a legitimate constitutional remedy which we, the people, cherish and our public officials supposedly swear to uphold should not be perceived or dismissed as a radical deviation from normative principles, but a prudent, rational, civil response to their disembowelment. The state convention process is a product of the Constitutional Convention itself, envisioned for exactly this moment, and the Liberty Amendments are intended to restore the framers' work. Now, this is not to say that all class of doubters who hold a contrary sentiment should be dismissed and their arguments declared meritless or contrived. Rational debate stimulates improvement by tapping into the experience, knowledge, and judgment of others. I understand that. The fact is the entire state convention enterprise relies on and rouses the broadest public participation and deliberation, which is exactly what the governing masterminds in Washington do not want. There will also be those who insist sincerely that electing the right president in Congress and appointing the right justices is not only more practicable but preferable to amending the Constitution. They will cling to a particular election or judicial decision as evidence of a vibrant republicanism, diluted by short respites and interludes to escape the intellectual and practical reality of societal transformation. I'm all for the election of candidates and the confirmation of justices who are faithful to the Constitution. Obviously, the amendment process doesn't preclude those efforts. But let us acknowledge the infrequency of these occurrences and the greater rarity of fidelity by these officials once ensconced in high office to constitutional boundaries. In fact, even the most virtuous and resourceful among them do not and cannot possess the aptitude and muscle to penetrate the daunting entrenchment and institutionalized apparatuses of this behemoth federal government. And the increasingly and significantly cloistered operations of the federal branches, the willful concealment of their deliberations, the delegation of power to elusive and unaccountable bureaucracies, and the centralization and concentration of authority are all intended to evade the Constitution, confound the citizen, and suppress self-government. This is a systemic problem that is bigger than any single federal election or administration. Now, the state convention process provides a constitutional way out, where, as George Mason himself declared, quote, the federal government should become oppressive, unquote. My Liberty Amendments offer a collection of reforms, a plan based on our founding principles, which address the status' most severe malpractices and distortions by decentralizing the accumulation of federal power, reviving federalism, and securing consensual government. If not my amendments, then other amendments. The point is, these are a point to launch off from, to discuss, and hopefully to become active on. Now, I recognize the daunting task before us. But if there are better alternatives for effectively restoring the American Republic, consistent with constitutional republicanism, not abstraction or novelties, so far they haven't been presented. And perhaps at a minimum, this project will kindle them. Let us hope so. There's no reason to be passive witnesses to our own society's dissolution at the command of governing masterminds in the federal government and their supporters. In the end, the people, upon reflection, will decide their own fate once their attention is drawn. That's my belief, and that is my hope. And as I quoted the end of last week, Ronald Reagan, You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. And if we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us that we justified our brief moment here. We did all that could be done. Reagan was with us. The framers are with us. Let us do all that can be done. Let us be inspired by the example of our forefathers and their courage, strength, and wisdom. Let us be inspired by the genius of the Constitution and its preservation of the individual and the civil society. Let us unleash an American Renaissance in which liberty is celebrated and self-government is cherished. Let us together, we the people, restore the splendor of the American Republic, because time is of the essence, and we need to get started today. Now, I'm not saying that every single person should run for public office. I'm not saying that every single person has time to take off from work and lead this battle or fight this battle. But let's get started by engaging, talking, discussing, breaking out of the mold that's been created for us. They're going to be the naysayers. We will deal with them. We will address them. We will confront them. There will be the ruling class that will oppose us. One day we will defeat them too. Our whole point here is to bypass them, to go over their heads. That's what this constitutional process provides for. We don't need them. We need you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. And don't forget, 9 p.m. Hannity tonight, the Fox News Channel. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Although I don't think I'm going to take many calls. I have a lot to say today. By the way, did you hear that over the weekend the communications director of the Republican National Committee suggested that moi, that's French, right? That I should be the moderator at the Republican primary conventions, debates, rather. I'm really of two minds on this. First, are they trying to suck up so I stop criticizing Reince Priebus or whatever Priebus, and stop hammering the Republican establishment and all the instrumentalities that they control, or do they really want me to do this? So, we're going to find out, because I accept. And I won't even charge you my usual fee. I don't have a usual fee. I'm just saying, I won't charge you anything. Is that legal, or do they have to pay me minimum wage? I don't even know. But, okay, so I accept. Now where are we? Unless, of course, you have 412 of them like last time. I can't keep up with that. But yes, I'll do it. I'd love to ask Chris Crispy a couple of questions. Excuse me, the Crispocrats' favorite candidate, Krispy Kreme. I would ask him a few questions. Number one, Governor, why did you refuse to sign a brief opposing Obamacare? Would have cost you nothing. It's the biggest disaster in modern lawmaking history. It's going to destroy health care, and people aren't going to get the doctors they need and the medical attention that they need, and their premiums are going through the roof to the extent they even have premiums anymore. So my question, Governor, is why didn't you sign on to that brief? And I've had other questions for Governor Christie. For instance, why are you weak on, securing the border? Why did you support the Ground Zero Mosque? Why are you a greenie? That is, a radical environmentalist. Why did you sign 10 out of 15 gun control bills? You know, you being the conservative and all, I would ask you these questions. Let's see, who else might be up there? Jeb Bush. Here's my question for Jeb Bush. Shouldn't there be 2 Bushes and then you're out? In other words, a 2 Bush limit on the presidency. That's it. Is that asking too much? I don't think so. We had John Adams and John Quincy Adams, and that was great. Now, we don't even know who his brother was or if he had a brother. But it seems to me 2 Bushes, and that's enough. 2 Bushes and you're out. 1 Clinton's enough. The Bushes, the Clintons, and so forth. I want to ask him about that. And plus, I want to ask him why he opposes illegal immigration and border security. And, folks, we have to get this language straight. If you support some form of legalization, amnesty, pathway to citizenship, what have you, for illegal aliens, then you don't support legal immigration. You may say you support legal immigrants, but you don't. You don't support legal immigration. You support anarchy on the border and an impossible immigration system. And by the way, did you read this story lately about this loophole and how people are getting into this country? I'll get to that in a moment. So I'm still focused on my moderating the Republican. Folks, any of you out there actually believe this crap that they're spewing? Levin would be a good moderator. Do you know how much they despise me? Do you know I can't even go to the Republican convention? I think I'm hated more there than the Democrat convention. At least at the Democrat convention, you know, they'll point and snicker and kind of shuffle off. But in the Republican, do you know how much you're hurting the Republican Party? These same buffoons who are destroying the Republican Party from within would be pointing to people like me. So yes, I'm available for your moderating Republican primary debates, but I don't believe it for 2 seconds. I don't even know the name of the guy who mentioned it. I don't keep track of the bureaucracy over there. Folks, Obamacare. Harry Reid, over the weekend, the Las Vegas Sun, he said Obamacare is just a step toward eventual single-payer system. And this has always been the plan, as everybody's talked about from day one. But just look how diabolical these creeps are. Just look how diabolical they are. A tax isn't a tax. A penalty isn't a penalty. If you want to keep your health care that you have, you can keep it. The price of your policy is going to go down $2,500. All these lies that somehow Obamacare is going to improve the nation's fiscal situation, which, of course, it never was and never could and never would. 30 million people that don't have health care are going to have health care when 30 million people who don't have health care still won't have health care. It's a massive constitutional abomination, redistribution of wealth, empowers the federal government, creates a database with all your personal medical records in it, shared with the IRS that has the muscle. The IRS is the enforcement arm now for health care in this country. I mean, if this isn't soft tyranny, I don't know what is. But don't worry, Obama says he's for free markets. No, Obama's not for free markets. He's for freebies. He's up there where is he? What the hell is that? Martha's Vineyard. Do I have a affiliate there? No. So who cares? He's up there in Martha's Vineyard, like the richest place on the face of the earth per capita, and the whitest, by the way, for all you racists out there. I know you're keeping head counts. And over there at HUD, I know you're doing your racial charting of neighborhoods. That island is particularly white. I just thought I would tell the white secretary of HUD, who is race obsessed. So Obama's there. And then you have people, some conservatives say, well, look, this is petty criticizing. What's petty? He's in a $7.6 million home. He's screwing up everybody's vacation there. You and I are subsidizing this crap. And then on the Drudge Report, they sent one of our jets to bring the dog there. Where the hell did I see that? Hold on a second. I'll find it. And nobody will care. An Osprey. We've never used Ospreys to move dogs around before. They're usually used to move troops around. Pretty amazing when you consider the furloughs that are in place for people in the military and so forth. This would have been a scandal. Here we go. This is, I don't know who this is, but first dog Bo is airlifted to Obama holiday home. Rooms have to be found for dozens of Secret Service agents. I want to give this credit. Oh, the Telegraph, of course, British. Someone has to carry a selection of presidential basketballs, and, of course, the family dog needs his own state-of-the-art aircraft. Arriving in the idyllic coastal retreat of Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Did I mention that it's white and rich there, by the way? I have no problem with it, but I know you leftists do. Mr. Obama left behind him in Washington, D.C., high-profile debates over the budget, government surveillance, health care reforms, and so forth and so on. He'll spend the next 8 days playing golf, going to the beach, buying books from the Bunch of Grapes bookstore. I wonder if my book will be there. What do you think, Mr. Producer? You think they'll have the Liberty amendments on the front shelf for Obama? Nah, I doubt it. In the air, he swapped his suit and tie for khakis and blue shirt with rolled-up sleeves while Mrs. Obama wore a yellow and white summer dress. And I'm sure nibbling on her organic carrots that she grew in the White House backyard. Now, Bo, the president's Portuguese water dog, what is it with these Portuguese water dogs? I don't have anything against them, but is that the favorite dog of liberals? Didn't Ted Kennedy have he had water dogs of some kind. Arrived separately on one of two MV-22 Ospreys, a hybrid aircraft which takes off like a helicopter but flies like a plane, and we've seen those. It's the first time the Ospreys have been taken on holiday by a president. Well, he didn't take it on holiday. His dog took it on holiday. How many of you out there have been to Martha's Vineyard? Have you been to Martha's Vineyard? Have you been to Martha's Vineyard? Well, Bo, the dog's been to Martha's Vineyard. I wonder if the dogs there are predominantly white. I'm just curious. More than 70 hotel rooms, each costing up to $345 a night, have been booked out for the Secret Service agents who took charge of luggage, including 2 large mesh bags full of basketballs. Not one basketball, not 2, but baskets of basketballs. The Obamas are staying in Chilmark on the western tip of the island, an area that's dotted with multi-million-dollar homes. My clock's broken, Mr. Producer, so you whisper in my ear when we're winding down here. The neighbors include actor Ted Danson and singer Carly Simon. Oh, good. A washed-up actor and a washed-up singer. On several previous visits, the Obamas have stayed at the 22-acre Blue Heron Farm, but it has since been sold to Britain's most celebrated architect, whose name we don't know. No. So he's downsized to a 7.6 million. I have a question. The U6 unemployment rate in this country is between 14 and 15%. Youth unemployment in this country is over 20%. Black youth unemployment in this country is near 50%. 1 out of 7 Americans is on food stamps. Of course, some of them are fraudsters, but still, 1 out of 7 Americans are on food stamps. The disability ranks in Social Security massively increasing. The hell is this? This is why the French had a revolution. Now, a stupid revolution, a destructive revolution, but they had a revolution. They said, you know what, we can't have these kings and these imperial, leaders and these magnificent, gold-lilied homes and furniture and all the rest. Obama talks about the middle class. Does he even know what that means? Now, that's a fabricated term started by Marx, but we can play along. Does he even know what that means? When's the last time, for instance, he vacationed in Newark, New Jersey? When's the last time he vacationed with his biggest constituency groups that have supported his presidency? He goes to Hawaii and hangs out with billionaires. He goes to Martha's Vineyard and hangs out with billionaires. I'm serious about this. All right, we'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
No, I didn't forget Harry Reid over the weekend saying this Obamacare really, they intended it to be a single-payer plan. Ladies and gentlemen, do you feel like you've been duped? Of course you were duped. You know what a single-payer plan is? That is when the IRS runs your health care system. That is when the IRS determines who gets what, when, and how, if at all, with no recourse whatsoever, which, of course, is what my book is about, the Liberty Amendments, that it's time that we have some recourse and that we do not accept this top-down iron fist. But now Harry Reid's actually bragging about being a lying sleazeball, with all due respect. Kathleen Supercilious, a.k.a. Sebelius, the secretary of HHS, back in June 2009 on NPR Hat-Tip Drudge Report, she said, absolutely not. That's not the case. Cut 2, go.
From the outset, the president has continued to say, we want a level playing field. You know, this is not a trick. This is not single payer.
Stop.
As you know.
Liar. You're a liar. That's what your goal was. These people are all liars, folks. Go ahead.
From the outset, the president has continued to say, we want a level playing field. You know, this is not a trick. This is not single payer. As you know, there have been a lot of congressional advocates who say, why not? Why can't we have a single payer? Mm-hmm. That's not what anyone is talking about, mostly because the president feels strongly, as I do, that dismantling private health coverage.
Shut up. Shut her. Hell with her. Proven liar. And then this is Harry Reid, another one. Las Vegas Sun over the weekend. What does he say here? What we've done with Obamacare is have a step in the right direction, but we're far from having something that's going to work forever. See, they're never done. They're never done stealing your liberty. They're never done stealing your property. They're never done lying to you. So it's incremental. Obamacare is this monstrosity, but it still doesn't go far enough, folks. They're not going to be happy till you're in the rice fields with the next guy standing in line with your little basket picking rice through your toes. And then they're going to check and see who has more rice. Where does this end? There is no end. But we're far from having something that's going to work forever. He said, we had a real good run at the public option. Don't think we didn't have a tremendous number of people who wanted a single-payer system. We had to get a majority of votes. In fact, we had to get a little extra in the Senate. We had to get 60. So they settled on Obamacare. So first they said it's not a tax, it's a penalty. So the Supreme Court steps in and says, no, it's not a penalty, it's a tax, to find some cockamamie argument to make it constitutional when it's not constitutional. Then we have Harry Reid saying, hey, look, we had to find some way to get this damn thing passed. We did what we could, but what we really want is single payer, and we're going to go back and get it. This is not representative constitutionalism, ladies and gentlemen. This is soft tyranny. It's not even soft tyranny. It's flat-out tyranny. So they passed this massive law, which you never had a chance to read, and still can't read because it's so massive. It's incomprehensible. It's so incomprehensible that the goofballs who voted for it can't tell you what's in it. And the experts, the accountants, the lawyers, and so forth, they're figuring out still what's in it. And it's so bad, Obama issues waivers and delays like an imperial king. But this is just a little step forward. You know, eventually we're going to get the single payer. And what happens when that doesn't work? It's all about rationing health care. It's all about price controls. It's all about imposing misery on you. That's what it's all about. And what are we going to do about this? Congress passed it unconstitutionally because they don't have authority to pass a law like this. Their authority is under Article 1, specific enumerated powers. This is not one of them. The president signed it. He didn't have authority to sign an unconstitutional law. And then his Justice Department defends it. Then it goes to the Supreme Court, where 5 justices, including the Chief Injustice, John Roberts, twists the law and the Constitution and the history and imposes it on us. And it's not enough. They want to go further. This is why I wrote the book. This is why we have to fight these things. This is why we have to do grassroots up and unravel what's going on in Washington. I'll be right back.
Lady Liberty? Well, this is Mr. Liberty. The Mark Levin Show. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
Speaking of Mr. Liberty, I have Mr. Liberty right here, my dear friend Alan West. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Mark, and you're too kind, and congratulations on the release of your new book today.
Well, thank you. I greatly appreciate it. Let me ask you a question. First of all, this guy at the RNC, this communications director, saying I should be the moderator at Republican primary debates. Is that the biggest head fake you've ever seen? Right, they're going to invite me. You don't believe that, do you?
No. I think that there will be people on both sides of the aisle that be terrified of you sitting there moderating a debate because of your in-depth knowledge of, the Constitution and really the means by which our founding fathers intended government to function here in America.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe you and I could do it. That would be a hell of a tag team, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, that Mr. Wrestling 1 and Mr. Wrestling 2. The old days.
By the way, I used to love that. Toru Tanaka, you remember that guy?
Oh, yeah. Abdullah the Butcher, Andre the Giant.
Oh, man, those were the good old days. But now we sound like we're old. All right, and of course we're not. Now, Alan West, Harry Reid says over the weekend, look, this is a good first step, Obamacare, but what we really need to do here is single payer. Is this not the most grotesque abuse of power you've seen?
Well, this is also the Harry Reid that said that, he thinks that opposition to the president is based upon his race. He just said that Friday as well. So, this is their true intention.
Hold on now. So opposition against you must be based upon race, too.
No, I'm a conservative. It's I'm fair game according to the liberal establishment. So that's that hypocrisy again. But when you look at the Affordable Care Act, this is something that is not ready for prime time. When you have a president and the executive branch is supposed to execute the laws, all of a sudden deciding that they want to take one portion of it, the employer mandate, and they want to arbitrarily delay it themselves. Well, that's supposed to go back through the legislative process. They don't have the power to be able to do that by the Constitution. So I think when you look at the unpopular nature of this now, the fact that, we have so many people that realize it's a train wreck for our small businesses. Max Baucus called it such. When we look at the fact that the members of Congress have carved out an exemption for themselves, our young people are going to be suffering because they're going to, do everything they can to force and coerce them to go into these exchanges so that they can balance out the payments. And you got the unions against it. So, this is something that we need to step away from. We need to take the time to properly assess. But I think the original intent was to make it so bad to force us to go into that single-payer system, which the president has said he's always been for.
Do you think Republicans in Washington, D.C. have made an effective enough case against Obamacare so that they are clearly on the side with the people who oppose this? Because I think it's getting all muddled up right now.
It is muddled up. And look, on our side, we need to be better as far as marketing. We need to be better as far as our messaging, and that's where we fail. This is not about a government shutdown. This is about saying we want the government to proceed. But right now, we cannot force something on the American people, which is nothing more than a tax law. It's about 20 to 21 new taxes. It's going to increase government agencies and bureaucracies by 159 new ones. You got the IRS going to have their hands all over this, and an IRS, the National Taxpayer Employers Union, that says they don't want to participate in it. Why should they be forced to participate in it? But yet they're supposed to be the executors of it, the guardians of it. So I think that we have not done a very good messaging job of saying this. These are the reasons why we're opposing this. This is not like the president said, that people are just making the case to prevent 30 million, 38 million Americans from having quality health care. And when you talk to Representative Tom Price from Georgia, he has some great free market solutions for, driving down the cost of health care in America.
Mm-hmm. You know, people think this is being picky, and it's not, in my view. We've got a U6 unemployment rate between 14 and 15%. We've got
Correct.
1 out of 7 people on food stamps. And by the way, all of them shouldn't be, but a lot of them have to be. We've got more and more people on disability, and you can go on and on and on about this economy. And this president's having a hell of a good time on our dime. Martha's Vineyard, he doesn't even dial it back. He doesn't even appear to want to dial it back.
Well, the optics are very bad, but then if you can continue to masquerade, and when you have a fawning liberal media that will, be that pulling guard for you as you get the football, he's going to continue with these type of actions. Look, Mark, we're moving away from an opportunity society to a dependency society, and I think the case in point we should look at this point in time in Ronald Reagan's term, we were clicking at 7 to 7.5% GDP growth. We're barely making 1% GDP growth in the Obama economy, and those are just the facts. And we need to be messaging that. We need to say that repeatedly, and I think that it will get through to the American people that this economy is not growing. This economy is not out of the dark. If Ben Bernanke and the Fed would stop printing money, I mean, we saw, I think, a month and a half, 2 months ago, how the market would react. So it's all artificial. It's smoke and mirrors.
I'm not trying to be picky, but it's pretty outrageous. If the Telegraph is accurate, they're reporting that an osprey was used to carry Bo, the Obama dog, to Martha's Vineyard. If that's accurate, I mean, how do they justify that?
You don't. I hate to play that type of small ball, but it really is a symptom of a bigger sense of a presidency of entitlement, a presidency of, do as I say, not as I do. And this is not about serving the American people. This is about being served. And, when you have a time when we are cutting back on our military, we should not be using Osprey aircraft to go pick up a pooch. And that really is, reprehensible in and of itself. But then when you look at all the things that are happening from, top to bottom across this administration, it's par for the course.
Now, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
you're going to put me on the spot.
I want to ask you a general question. And people would say, why the hell didn't you ask him the question? So I'm going to ask you the question. Do you see politics and elective office in your future?
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll probably look to come back in the 2016 cycle. I will tell you that right now, the voice that I can have out here speaking to the American people, and the platform that I have between Next Generation TV and Fox News, and I'm trying to follow in your footsteps, and I've written a book, and that'll come out early next year.
Oh, really? Good.
So hopefully we can continue on to get our message out. And like I said, it's just an honor to be a tag team mate in this fight for liberty with you.
Well, you're very kind. It's my great honor. I'm going to tell you something. When I went down there and met you and your beautiful wife with my father and a campaign rally, those people love you in Florida. I don't care what happened in this election result, which you can comment or not, which seemed awfully sleazy to me. But the fact of the matter is you are extremely popular there, and for good reason. And I suspect people are really craving confident, knowledgeable, conservative statesmanship. That's what they want. That's why I think you see the popularity of a Ted Cruz and you and Sarah Palin and so forth, because people want somebody who's going to stand on principle and show them that there's a way out of this.
Yeah, the American people want genuineness, and once again, the founding fathers did not meant for politics and politicians to become a career pursuit. They meant for people that would come up here, do the business of legislating for the country, serving, and going back home. But we turned it into something totally different, and it really is a self-licking ice cream cone, if I can borrow that from my military vernacular. And we've got to turn it around, because we're getting to the point where the future for our children and grandchildren are so severely threatened right now, unlike I had ever seen before in my life. And my parents, who did not have, a lot of great, things for them when they were born in 1920 and 1930 in South Georgia and South Alabama, they wanted to ensure that I had a better future, and I think that's what we have to fight to do.
Well, Alan West, you are a great guy, personally and professionally and career-wise, and a great public servant. I want to thank you for coming on, and God bless. And when your book comes out, I want you to come on this show, because I like to talk about good books.
Well, you got it, and I'll be there because we're going to talk about, what it means to be a constitutional conservative and the way ahead for our country.
God bless you, my friend. You
Thanks
take
so much,
care.
Mark.
All right. Alan West. Now, folks, there's a fiscal fight in Washington approaching. In fact, it's due to start next month. It's likely to rattle the confidence in the American economy once again. I'm talking about the 2014 budget and debt ceiling debates. More uncertainty at a minimum. Are you going to be prepared if our economy collapses under the weight of government, debt, and inflation one day? With gold and silver at 2-year lows, now is the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic collapses. With Goldline's two-way price guarantee program, if the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to reprice it at the lower price. And if the price of your qualifying purchase goes up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has you covered. Call Goldline today, the only precious metal company I trust, to learn more about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special. And for limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that I, Mark Levin, sent you, Goldline will include the free commemorative medal as long as they last. And they don't last forever. Ben Franklin on one side, Independence Hall on the other. My choice, the designs that I chose. It's a substantial medal. I know you'll like it. And also the free investor kit. So call Goldline right now, 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. That's 1-877-365-2646, 1-877-365-COIN. That's 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
I spent a lot more time in this in the first hour. But let me just hit this quickly again because listeners come and go throughout a program. Of course, my most loyal listeners, they hang on my every consonant and vowel. But I know all of you can't do that. Some of you are actually productive citizens. But anyway, that you can be productive and do that too, I suppose. What the hell am I talking about? But anyway, you heard my discussion with Colonel West. So they passed this law, this Obamacare. Congress passes a law that it has no power to pass. Check it out, Article 1, but take my word for it if you prefer. The president signs a law that he has no power to sign. It goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court mangles the Constitution because it has no power to uphold an unconstitutional statute. This, in so many words, is the definition of tyranny. And this law was so important to the ruling class in Washington, D.C., and the governing masterminds, that they were going to impose it on us any way they could. Because this is the final nail. This is what opens the Constitution to all kinds of attacks that even hitherto was not the case. So now what do we do? So what does Harry Reid say? It doesn't go far enough. So the iron fist is going to become more and more active. And what kind of a free society puts its aggressive tax-collecting agency in charge of your health care? Unless the purpose is not so much health care, but coercion and torment and control. Now, if you listen to most conservatives today, they're going to whine about it, and that's all they're going to do. They don't have any options. They don't have any ideas. Some of our patriots are trying to fight it on the Senate and House floor by defunding chunks of it, and they're under assault, a ferocious assault, not just by the Democrats, but by Republicans, former Bush staffers, as a matter of fact, because the Republican Party supports the status quo. And if Obamacare's in the status quo, then so be it. And even more than that, they join the Democrats in supporting things like essentially open borders, a pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens and so forth. You already know the list of horribles. But back to this Obamacare. So if we accept the mindset that exists in Washington, D.C., that is fed to us by the media and academia, that is supported by the leadership of the modern Republican Party, and certainly the activists in the Democrat Party, we're done. We are stuck with this law, and if Harry Reid decides to change it and even make it more aggressive, more totalitarian, then that's it. There's nothing we can do. It's over. And I say bullcrap to that. Now, there's no easy way to fight this, but the Constitution provides us with a path. It's up to us to decide whether we want to pursue this path or not. It's up to us to decide whether we're prepared to fight and to fight with resolution. It's not going to be easy. These people are dug in, and this mindset is ingrained. And what I'm trying to do is start a debate, start a discussion that hopefully will lead to activism. Now, a lot of conservatives, not you, but a lot of these pseudo-intellectual conservatives who are really comfortable with what's going on, but like writing columns to themselves, this is going to be perplexing to them at a minimum, and they will be hostile to it at some point. There'll be some backlash. I can't wait. I cannot wait to engage these people on the battlefield of ideas. I cannot wait to expose their pseudo-intellectualism. I cannot wait to expose how illiterate they are about American history and the Constitution and the constitutional debates. But you will be informed, and you can be engaged. There are several ways under the amendments that I propose to address in Obamacare. And by the way, I am not so arrogant and delusional to believe that somehow Mark Levin gets to impose amendments he thought up on the nation. The reason that I drafted these amendments is to show you that we can confront what's going on in this country if we get a state convention process in place, which is provided for under Article 5. It's not to say that I have the only right way. It's to say, take a look at this. See what's possible one day if we take our country back. I get two reactions, by the way. One is, well, you'll have a runaway convention, and that'll be that. How can you have a runaway convention? It is states sending delegates to a convention for the purpose of amending the Constitution, not a constitutional convention. The language in the Constitution says for the purpose of amending the Constitution. It is no different than if Congress convenes and two-thirds of the members of Congress propose amendments for the states to consider. What, are we going to have a runaway Congress? Nobody ever talks about that. That's number one. Number two, do we have faith in the federalism system or don't we? We like to talk about the authority of the states and the sovereignty of the states. Well, this puts it to a test. Do conservatives support it or not? Or are they going to surrender to what they believe is the inevitable federal Leviathan imposing its will on each and every one of us? This is the question. I say we must break away from this. Because if we don't, it's going to devour us. It is over. So there's several ways to address this, and I provide several to address it in the book. Not specific to Obamacare, but specific to any effort by the federal government to impose unconstitutional laws on us. As an example, by 3/5 vote of the states can override a federal statute. By 3/5 votes of the states can override a federal regulation with an economic value of over $100 million. By 3/5 votes of the states can override a majority decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, there's some particulars and nuances in each amendment, but let me tell you something. That's not majoritarianism. That's not a popular vote, which I would reject too. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a constitutional republicanism. Either you believe in it or you don't. I'll be right back.
Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I failed to mention last hour. Do you know what happens at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight? Do you know what happens at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight? I'll be on the Hannity TV show on the Fox News Channel, coming out of the bunker. This will be a rare appearance. I'm only doing a couple. Hannity tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you'll watch it. I believe it's the first two segments in which we'll be launching the Liberty Amendments, restoring the American Republic. And, folks, this is going to really start to separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls now. It really is. And I would challenge the rhinos out there, or as I call them, the French Republicans. I would challenge them. I would challenge the governing masterminds and their ruling class. I would challenge them to a debate on any of these issues. But I would also ask skeptics this question. If not this, what? If not this, what? As I explain in the book, I am not saying we give up the battlefield on national elections, in primaries, in rallies, in contacting members of Congress. Why would we do that? I'm just saying it's not enough. It's quite obvious it's not enough. So what do? Let's say we elect the next Ronald Reagan president of the United States. And after 8 years of that great president, what then? Then we'd get another French Republican, which is exactly what happened after Reagan. Then a succession of more Democrats, and on they go. The problem is, folks, that this is a systemic issue. The federal bureaucracy, the courts, the lawmaking process. None of that's going to change no matter who is elected president of the United States. There's only one way to fix this, and that's the states, specifically the state legislatures, even more specifically, your delegate and your state senator, and holding their feet to the fire over time. This may be a well, Mark, we don't have any time. Well, folks, we don't have any choice. It's not door number 1, 2, or 3. There's only one door. But you know what? We should be enthusiastic about this. We should be celebrating this. We should be positive about this. We have something that our founding fathers, through the framers of the Constitution, through the framers of the state constitutional conventions, gave us. They gave us something they didn't have. They gave us a way to respond to an oppressive federal government that controls our health care and our automobile and our toilet and our water flow and our toasters and everything else. They gave us an option, which is exactly why it's not discussed on TV, which is exactly why politicians in Washington will denounce it, and same with their disciples. But you don't have to follow them, because if you follow them, you're going right off the cliff. You can read it yourself. And I provide the history behind this Article 5 and the Second Amendment process. Folks, there are two amendment processes. One is as legitimate as the other. One is as judicious as the other. But they hate the second process because it involves you. They love the first process because they control it. In addition, these people are mangling the Constitution every day. I wrote in Men in Black years ago, the Supreme Court is an ongoing constitutional convention, endlessly rewriting that document. Well, Mark, we have to be careful. Be careful of what? The Constitution that was written is not the Constitution as applied today. And by the way, there will also be those who say, well, what's Mark, the only guy that knows how to interpret the Constitution? No. Originalists can disagree on how to interpret a provision of the Constitution, and they often do. Scalia and Thomas don't always agree. No, what I'm talking about, though, is an abandonment of the Constitution. When you use foreign law to interpret the Constitution, how is that even rational? That has nothing to do with the framers. What the French decide to do today with free speech is irrelevant to us. Or our Congress abandoning its limits by doing a Dodd-Frank or Obamacare or 1,000 other things, by this massive administrative state, issuing 3,000 laws a year in defiance of our founding principles. That destroys representative government. That destroys the consent of the governed because we have no access to this system. This is a fourth branch of government. That's not even in the Constitution. And Congress delegates enormous power to this fourth branch of government, which is within the executive branch. So now we have the executive branch not only executing the laws, or I should say executing what laws they like, but making the laws. We have the Supreme Court not only interpreting the law, but making the law. And we have Congress not only making laws within the Constitution, but passing laws outside the Constitution. So what are we supposed to do about this? Just keep reading George Will columns? You know, that George Will is right. Look at that. He's right. He's got that one. No question about it. Or just watch Karl Rove with his stupid whiteboard on TV all the time. Look at this. If we line them up this way, we line them up that way. Folks, it ain't going to fly. The question is, and I've been asked, well, this is a tough process. Yes, it is. But we have to decide who we are. And maybe we're done. We have to decide if we're Americans. We have to decide if we have the heart and soul and strength of our founding fathers and every prior generation. Whether they fought for political liberty among themselves or whether they fought wars to keep us free. We have to decide this. And maybe there's not enough of us left. Maybe we're too idealistic. But I don't think so. When you look at your children and your grandchildren, what are you going to say to them? Look, what do you want me to do? It's just too tough. Now, what do I want you to do? Well, do what you want. But what I'd like you to do is to start informing yourself about this. Because this isn't going to be easy because, I'm going to tell you now, it's not going to come through TV commercials. It's not going to come through most of the hosts on TV. It's not going to come through most of the hosts anywhere. It's not going to be spoon-fed in academia. They're going to reject it. You're going to see the minute somebody speaks out in favor of this, whether it's a member of Congress or somebody else, they're going to be pounced on. And by the way, I love counterpunching. As you know, I'm the UFC host. I love counterpunching. So bring it on, baby. Bring it on. I'm ready to debate this as much as I have to debate it. But that's beside the point. The point is I want you to know about this. I want you to really not only be comfortable with it, but enthusiastic about it. I want you to pass the message along to as many people as you can. And by the way, you don't even have to buy the book. You probably get it at a library at some point. But the case is made. And the way this book is structured is really for you, my listening audience. This book isn't written for the people who run the country. It's not written for the academics. It's not written for any of these people. It's written for you. And the way the book is structured is it's broken into 11 amendments, which are 10 chapters. 2 of the amendments overlap, spending and taxing. So it's 10 chapters, 11 amendments, in addition to an introductory chapter and a final chapter, which I think they're very important to read those as well. Then in the appendix, I just have the amendments alone for quick reference. And then I have page after page after page of notes that you can go look at for original sources. Original sources. Because you'll find that most of the people who will attack what I'm talking about are not going to use original sources. They're going to talk about history as if it began with the New Deal and move their way forward. Because that's all they know. That's all they care about. They're caught up in the works. They're all gummed up with all the rest of it. They're going to defend their former boss or bosses or what have you, or use left-wing language to talk about Republican. These people are old. They're tired. They're directionless. They're irrelevant. The only way they're relevant is if we allow them to be relevant. So we should be very positive about what the framers have left us. We should celebrate this. We should talk about it. And let me tell you something. It is my hope one day, it is my prayer one day, that we will have this state convention process. States used to meet as a collective all the time. They used to reach agreements. They used to sign formal compacts. There's nothing radical about what I'm proposing. My dear friends at the Daily Caller, they wrote a very, very nice piece, but then in the headline it's my radical approach. It's not radical at all unless you are consumed by the mentality that exists today. The Constitution is not radical. This provision of the Constitution is no more radical than the other amendment process in the Constitution. And moreover, it's not radical because this provides a constitutional, civil, peaceful option. George Mason himself, who insisted on this Second Amendment process, said, what if the government becomes oppressive? What's the alternative for the people? Violence? We have to do something short of that. If this is radical, then the framers of the Constitution were radical. If this is radical, then the framers who attended the state conventions were radical. If this is radical, then every single individual since then who's put his hand on a Bible, and the one or two have put them on a Koran, and have sworn allegiance and faith to the Constitution of the United States, they're all radical too, because this is part of the Constitution. And unlike our opponents, unlike the statists, unlike those who continue to grow the federal government and concentrate power in the hands of fewer and fewer politicians and bureaucrats, unlike them, we embrace the Constitution. We don't seek to evade it. We don't seek to rewrite it. Well, Mark, you're proposing amendments. I am proposing amendments as examples to entice you into supporting a state convention process, and every single amendment that's proposed. This is the reason each one has a chapter. Explains how it is tied to the framers' original intent. Often with quotes from the Constitutional Convention, the state conventions. There's nothing novel. There's no abstraction. There's no invention here. All right, I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
By the way, at the bottom of the hour, my buddy Congressman Louis Gohmert was slapped around a little bit, but slapped back, I might add, on This Week with ABC News on Sunday. And George Will was the one confronting him, so I want to give Louis an opportunity at the bottom of the hour to speak to that. But, you know, in addition to all these big constitutional issues that we have to grapple with, these congressmen and senators are so out of control that they think that they can deal with everything and anything, and that's not their role. Let me give you an example. It's actually a silly example, no thanks to me, but to Chucky Schmucky Schumer. This is Fox New York. Listen to this one. There's a growing threat to the health of people in parts of the metropolitan area, this is New York City, tick-borne illnesses. The threat's so severe that U.S. Senator Charles Schumer, Chucky Schmucky, is calling on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to address the threat. Ticks. Now, where I live, we have ticks. We have this Lyme disease problem. And the town and the county and the state are dealing with it. But a tick, you know what? Speaking of ticks, every time I think of Chuck Schumer, I have a tick. It goes like this. My head kind of slams to the side. Anyway, that's how out of control the federal government has become. I don't really think a United States senator needs to get involved in the tick issue. I think New York City can do it. I think the state can do it. So everything's up for grabs. Now look at this one. Loophole. People are being told to use keywords to cross the border. San Diego. A loophole is allowing hundreds of immigrants across Mexico and across the border to the United States to use a loophole. Immigrants are being taught to use keywords and phrases to be allowed to enter and stay in the United States. I'm sure Chuck Schumer won't be focused on this. Now, he's got the whole tick thing he's dealing with, but when it comes to this loophole, he probably supports it. Just this past Monday, Border Patrol agents say about 200 people came through Otay Crossing claiming a, quote, credible fear of the drug cartels. The key phrase, credible fear. So many were doing this, they had to close down the processing center and move the overflow by vans to another station. They're being told if they come across the border, when they come up to the border and they say certain words, they will be allowed into the country, said a person who didn't want to be identified on camera. We're being overwhelmed. Pete Nunes, former U.S. attorney and immigration expert, says this will swamp the system. But don't worry, we have operational control of the border, according to Obama. Everything Obama says, the opposite is true. To make our system even more ridiculous than it has been in the past, he adds, there are no detention facilities for families, so the family would have to be split up. We don't want to split up families, so we end up releasing people out into the community on bond and bail. So the whole family's coming into the country. It's a huge loophole, says the former U.S. attorney. There has to be a policy change, he said, something implemented, an emergency implementation that will stop this. Otherwise, we'll have thousands coming in. Immigrants are telling the Port Enforcement Team, or PET, that the cartels are ripping apart their state. There's no word on whether this same loophole is being used in Arizona. Well, I'll give you the word. If it's being used in California, it's being used in Arizona. Well, somebody call Mr. Producer. Let's call Chuck Schumer's office and ask him when he's done dealing with the ticks, will he check out this loophole? Maybe we can tell him that the tick is coming in from across the southern border. Can we do something about it then? No, whatever. And there's one more. I hope I have time to get to this, maybe after the break, and maybe sometime near the last segment. Ladies and gentlemen, the Department of Education is not going to test certain students for certain things because they keep failing. And they don't want you to know it. It's stunning. I'll be right back with Louis Gohmert.
Got your tongue? Cough up a fur ball and call 877-381-3811 right now for Mark Levin.
So I'm doing my radio prep, as is my wont, and I do it all weekend long, all night, all in the morning. And I come across the website Mediaite.com with this headline: George Will slams Representative Gohmert for causing chaos. House GOP cannot govern this country. Then we have this clip from, This Week, ABC's This Week, a show in which I have been invited and have thus far declined. Cut one, go.
Does the government shut down in September? Well, the congressman says that's a lie. Remember when Mark Twain said the difference between a lie and a cat is a cat only has 9 lives? The fact is that this president has the power, particularly when it's supported as this one is by the mainstream media, to set the narrative. And the narrative will be that the Republicans have chosen simply to cause chaos. And I think it's a bad idea.
Bad idea to go down the line.
You cannot govern this country from one half of one of our 3 branches of government. Can't be done.
But apparently you can govern it from 1/3 of the government, I guess the presidency. Congressman Louis Gohmert, my friend, aren't you a little tired of these guys surrendering before the battle?
Well, no matter what area of life you're in, there are always people that are willing to surrender before the fight. And I've always admired George Will, brilliant intellect. And bless his heart, as brilliant as he is, he's been persuaded by establishment Republicans that we need to give up a fight before we fight.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, even if you fight a fight and in the end you don't get what you want, you've made a case. The Democrats may have to some extent, alter what they're doing. The American people will know who's right and who's wrong. I mean, if you just surrender right up front, all of that is given up.
Well, Mark, and of course you talk about this all the time, but it's so true, and this is the point I make to our leadership. Look, we at least have to fight. We at least have to differentiate between us and the other side, because one of the things that our leaders keep doing is telling us we have to pass a bill in the House that comes close to what we think the Senate will pass. And I say, why? Why not stand up for our principles? Because even if we don't win now, the American public sees a clear differentiation between the people that believe like they do and the people that are taking us down the path to the dustbin of history. And at least show that difference. And our leaders think, no, we can't stand up. This is no time to fight. And I think every time basically is a time to show who you are and what you believe in. Why capitulate? And we'll never, and you point this out all the time. And by the way, congratulations on the new book. Great job.
Thank you.
And but yeah, we need to stand up and show people what we believe in.
Well, what gets me is I think Republicans are losing elections because people are sick of the fact that they are rudderless, that they don't really speak for anybody. And if you're going to be a 30%, 40% Democrat and a 70%, 60% nothing else, you know, you look at the last presidential election, Obama's numbers were down and the Republicans' numbers were down. There is a void to be filled there. And last time I checked, it was Reagan who won 2 landslides. And why we won't at least try to emulate what he did is beyond comprehension to me.
It is, and it is to me, too. We just cannot ever out-pander the Democrats. So why not stand up for the things we believe in? I still believe most America believes in the things that made America great, and there's still a majority that believe that. But let's face it, the last election, we did not give the American public somebody who could stand up on the number one issue, Obamacare, because they really did model Obamacare after Romneycare.
But, I mean, and the other thing is, we get these opinion makers, some of them are columnists, some of them are commenters on TV and so forth, and they'll talk about how the Constitution's being violated. They'll talk about how our economy is on an unsustainable path with government activity. They'll talk about all these things, and then when you guys say, okay, let's fight Obamacare and do what we can to stop it, you don't know the outcome in advance. You don't know the outcome of a lot of military operations in advance, and they're cutting your legs out from under you. I'm saying these people are schizophrenic. On the one hand, they're banging the alarm bells of what's going on. The other, you got a few guys like you and a handful of others who are willing to stand up, and they cut your legs out from under you.
Well, they do. They want to beat us up for standing up for the things we all got elected on. And by the way, on that clip that whoever those goofballs were that had that headline, what they didn't play was the clip of me immediately before that, because George Stephanopoulos played a clip of the president saying, the holy grail for Republicans is preventing people from getting health care. And he went to George Will with that, but I just could not sit there and let that lie go without being addressed. And I said, wait a minute, that's a false narrative. That's not what anybody is trying to do. There's not a single Republican trying to keep people from getting health care. Because getting Obama insurance from an exchange is not the same thing as getting health care.
Are you supporting a law to deny people health care?
Of course not.
Are you supporting a law that would prevent doctors from taking care of patients?
In fact, I'm supporting a law that will force people to be allowed exactly what they're saying. It always gets me, and you point this out, but the president, the Democrats always have their goal, and then they attribute it to us. So anytime you hear something like that, they must be doing that because they're blaming the Republicans. And the fact is that Obamacare, whether you call it a death panel or not, there's a panel that is going to say, you know what, you've had a good life, but just like the president told the lady at the White House that wanted to make sure her mom could get a pacemaker, which she had gotten 10 years before and was still alive because of it, he said maybe she's better off just getting a pain pill. The panel is going to prevent people from getting the health care they need. So the truth is the Democrats that support Obamacare are all in favor of preventing people from getting the health care they need, especially seniors, and like the 10-year-old girl that it would have denied having a chance to have a transplant, just like Sibilia said. We're not going to let her have that. No, she's too young.
All right, now, Congressman, let me ask you this question. Harry Reid said over the weekend, look, this is a good first start. Now, we knew this.
Sure.
But now we need this single payer and so forth. I mean, if these Republicans keep rolling over, before you know it, we're going to wake up in this country, and we're not going to recognize any part of it.
That's right. And that is why when Bette Midler tweeted out something like on July 4th, if the founders had lost the revolution, we'd all have universal health care. Well, you look at the survival rates.
I never liked her.
Yeah, you look at, I like her as an entertainer.
I never liked her. She's a slob, but go ahead. That's me, not you.
Well, she's the wind beneath my something. But anyway, you look at the English healthcare system, and even on breast care in particular, they're 19-20% below our survivability rate. So if you want England's healthcare, which 1 out of 5 women with breast cancer that has lived under our system do you want to die so that we can say we're like English now? I mean, it's outrageous. We want people to get care when they need it. They want to be able to say who gets care and deny care to those they don't want to have.
Well, what is really frustrating to me is not only are we on the correct side of this issue, not only do the American people support us, the Republicans said that they will do everything they can to stop this. And then immediately, when a couple of you say, okay, there's really only one way to begin to unravel this. This is through the power of the purse. We can keep voting on these silly bills or resolutions to repeal Obamacare. I mean, what bothers me, Louis Gohmert, is the same people who kept flopping that silliness on the floor for you guys to vote on, who knew that would be meaningless, are now saying, well, no, don't fight them on the purse strings issue because we won't make any headway. I mean, it seems to me a little contradictory and hypocritical. But all of that said, I think if the American people saw a Republican Party that was strong, that was principled, that had direction, that was prepared to take on this president whose popularity is sinking, and prepared to take on Obamacare, you would see the numbers for the Republicans increase.
Mark Levin, that ought to be the banner we hold high. I think what you said is 100% true. It's exactly what we need to show the American people. And the fact that we might lose is no reason not to take that stand because, the guys at the Alamo, they knew that they were going to lose, but they also knew they were giving the force coming behind them a chance to win in the end. And the American people win if we avoid Obamacare kicking in. And as you know, it was the president back in a speech some years back that said, hey, we'll never be able to get the complete government-run health care, single payer in one step. And Obamacare was the first step. And I'm glad Reid finally openly admitted that. And that's another reason we've got to stop it. We got the best health care in history, and this is no time to destroy it.
Well, I have to go. I wanted to bring you on to respond to the attack, but I also want you to know that in my view, having studied these men as extensively as I can, you would have fit in perfectly with the framers of the Constitution, Louis Gohmert. God bless you. You take care of yourself.
That's the highest compliment I could have. Thanks so much, Mark.
All right, you take care. There's a good man, a patriot. A Kentucky woman who admitted to stealing someone else's identity to buy a car was sentenced to 39 months in federal prison. She admitted she obtained the date of birth and Social Security number of another person through the Internet. She then assumed the identity of this victim and used it to purchase a car from a car dealership. She also tried to use the victim's identity to buy furniture. Now, folks, identity thieves are very shrewd, and they're targeting your checking and savings accounts. They're also after your cash and your retirement. Identity theft has become such a serious and complex crime, you simply can't fight it alone. I trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my bank accounts from takeover fraud, and I also had my parents get it. LifeLock can't protect you or your bank accounts if you're not a member. So visit lifelock.com/Levin/LEVIN for details and get my special 10% discount. Or just call and use promo code Levin to get the 10% discount. The number is 1-800-457-LOCK, 1-800-457-LOCK. That's 1-800-457-LOCK. The network doesn't cover all transactions, and scope may vary.
Mark Levin.
Superfly. By the way, I meant everything I said about Louis Gohmert. I've often said I was born in the wrong time, that I really wished I'd been at the Constitutional Convention. And I could see sitting right next to me there, Louis Gohmert. I really could. Others, too. Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee. I can't name them all, but, man, anyway. I want to hit this story briefly because it's so outrageous. National Review Online. The Heartland Institute picked up a piece of information. The National Assessment of Educational Progress exams in civics, U.S. history and geography, have been indefinitely postponed for 4th and 12th graders. The Obama administration says it's due to the $6.8 million sequestration budget cut. It's amazing. The sequestration is under 1% of the budget. And it's become a joke. Oh, you can't, sequestration. So the 3 exams will be replaced by a single new test, technology and engineering literacy. But without these tests, says John Hale, Associate Director at the Center for Civic Education, advocates for a richer civic education will not have any kind of test to use as leverage to get more civic education in the classrooms. Can't have civic education because civic education might lead to supporting the civil society. And the federal government's very busy devouring the civil society. That is, everything that's not government-oriented, like your economic activity, your religious activity, things of that sort. So we can't have civic education. What we need is government indoctrination. So this is the way I see it. With Michelle Obama's food obsession and all the rest, we're going to have a bunch of skinny, starving kids who don't know anything about the history of their country, who don't care about the civil society, but are very good at marching to the tune of the government. How much time do I have left? Just show me some fingers there. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you this is the last segment of the program today. I wanted to remind you at 9 p.m. Eastern, I hope you'll tune into the Fox News channel. I will be on Hannity's TV show for, I think, the first 2 segments where we'll be launching on television the Liberty Amendments, restoring the American Republic. It should be, I think, for you and my audience, it should be pretty interesting. Hopefully compelling. I even bought a new tie, and I don't wear a lot of ties. So, yes, I hope you'll join us. And also, I should mention that tomorrow at 4 p.m., I will be on Neil Cavuto's show on the Fox News channel. I have all these invitations coming in, from the Today Show and Meet the Press and CBS. No, I'm lying. None. But it's partly my fault because I don't ask them. And if they were to ask me, I probably wouldn't do it. So it depends. And the reason is simple. Not that I don't want to engage them, which I do desperately. It's because it's pointless. They're part of the problem. I do look forward to engaging people who think they're literate on this subject and think they are conservatives as a matter of course and principle, who complain and write and speak out against what's going on in our country, but provide not a single path for addressing it. None. And when it comes to these proposals that I make, all of which involve federalism, really, all of a sudden they're not all that into federalism. Oh, we can't trust the states. Oh, we can't trust the delegates. Oh, they're really not informed about this process. And this process exists exactly for these purposes, exactly for our times as they exist today. So I hope you'll watch 9 p.m. Eastern Hannity TV show. Also, I want to thank a number of people, and I hope I don't miss anybody, but I might. Jeff Lord over at the American Spectator. Thank you, sir. Wonderful piece. Joel Pollack. Wonderful job over there at Breitbart. Jen Kuznicki. Wonderful column. I know I'm going to miss somebody now. This is going to frustrate me to no end. Because there have been many good people writing many good things. And I just can't think of everybody. But guess what? Tomorrow's another day, and I'll think of everybody. So I want to thank them. By the way, go to my social sites, Mark Levin Show, Facebook, Mark Levin Show, Twitter, and let me know what you think of the program, and let me know what you think of the book, too. The more people there, the merrier, and we appreciate that, too. All right, folks, I'm in New York today. I'll be in New York tomorrow. And by the way, I want to thank everybody at WABC Studios, too, for all of your support here as well. Matt is sitting in for Mr. Producer. You're Mr. what? Substitute producer? And he's doing a great job. Now, you'll notice Mr. Call Screener isn't here right now. That's because he's busy building models with glue. He likes glue, although I told him to stop sniffing it. So I think he's doing a good job of that. All right, one other thing I want to get to before we leave, and that's this. You. I want to thank you, my audience, for all the years of supporting this program. This book has probably been the most difficult endeavor that I've been involved in terms of an intellectual effort and talking about it and so forth. But I want to thank you, and I want to salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. So, America, I'll be right back here tomorrow with you. We'll be getting into more and more stuff. 9 p.m., Fox News Channel, Hannity. See you tomorrow.